Hello. Hello, my testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, my check. Hello.
I invite on stage Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, International Committee for Animal Recording, ICAR. Mr. Philippe Trosset, Chair, MMSG, Science and Program Coordination Committee, International Dairy Federation, IDF. Mr. Hans Krusen, Secretary, TCMMP, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. I once again invite Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, ICAR. Good morning. On behalf of National Dairy Development Board, it is our pleasure to welcome all the dignitaries and participants assembled here for the International Committee for Animal Recording, ICAR, Annual Conference, and International Dairy Federation, IDF, and International Organization for Standardization, ISO Analytical Week 2025, with focus on sustainable livestock farming through harmonization, technology, and innovation. Today, we have a distinguished gathering with us, which includes representatives from eminent organizations, Government of India, ICAR, IDF, ISO, Agriculture and Dairy Institutes, policymakers, and professionals from across the globe. We inaugurate the conference by lighting the lamp. I request the dignitaries on dais to please come forward for lighting the lamp. Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India, and President INC-IDF. Dr. Minesh Shah, Chairman, National Dairy Development Board, and Member Secretary, INC-IDF. Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, ICAR. Mr. Philippe Trosset, Chair, MSSG, Science and Program Coordination Committee, IDF. Mr. Hans Krusen, Secretary, TCMMP, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. You're requested to kindly take the seats on the dais. Now I request Dr. Minesh Shah, Chairman, NDDB, to welcome the dignitaries with bouquet, shawls, and mementos. Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India. Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, International Committee for Animal Recording, ICAR. Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, International Committee for Animal Recording, ICAR. Mr. Philippe Trosset, Chair, MSSG, Science and Program Coordination Committee, International Dairy Federation, IDF. Mr. Hans Krusen, Secretary, TCMMP, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. S. Raghupati, Executive Director, NDDB, for the welcome address.
Good morning, everybody. Chief guest of today's program, inaugural session, Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Honorable Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India. Our Honorable Chairman of NDDB, Dr. Minesh Shah, Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President, International Committee for Animal Recording, Mr. Philippe Trossard, Chair, Method Standard Steering Group, and Member, Science and Program Coordination Committee of International Dairy Federation, Dr. Hans Krozen, Secretary, Technical Committee on Milk and Milk Products of the International Organization for Standardization, members of ICAR Board, Dr. N.H. Kelewala, Vice Chancellor, Kamadin University, Dr. K.B. Kathiria, Vice Chancellor, Anand Agriculture University, Shri Jain Mehta, MD, GCMF, Shri Manish Bandish, MD, MDFPL, Dr. C.P. Devanand, MD, NDS, Shri Bagash Mageshwari, MD, IDMC, Dr. Rajesh Nair, MD, NCL, and Mr. Rajesh Subramaniam, MD, Mirda Limited, Shri Amit Vyas, MD, Amul, the distinguished delegates from the various countries, invited guests, colleagues from NDDB, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a great occasion for the country fraternity in India, especially the NDDB family, as for the first time, we are hosting the ICAR Annual Conference and IDF ISO Analytical Week in India. It is our privilege to host a subject experts from all over the world, including India. We are indeed thrilled to have you all in person here at Anand, better known as the milk capital of India. As the National Dairy Development Board, we are committed to improve productivity of dairy cattle and buffaloes belonging to the farmers and deliver safe milk products to consumers. This joint event is very relevant to these objectives. ICAR has expertise in forming guidelines for recording various aspects of livestock production, and this is very critical for both these purposes. NDDB has been following ICAR standards and guidelines for animal identification and performance recording. Based on our experience from ICAR, many international programs of breed improvements are being designed and implemented. I heartily welcome experts from ICAR who will exchange their knowledge and experiences during the deliberations in the coming 3 days. IDF has been the apex body uniting the dairy sector in the world. NDDB has been working closely with IDF. We successfully hosted a World Dairy Summit during the year 2022. Role of IDF is very important in shaping policies for advancing dairy. I welcome the delegates from IDF, and I am sure that we will have engaging deliberations and fruitful sessions. ISO is the apex body that decides the standards and testing procedures for various products, including livestock and food products that are very useful in maintaining food quality and safety. Many BIC standards in India are based on ISO standards. The conference had sessions that will provide insights to analytical and food safety standards in India. Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India, is supporting programs in the form of funding and policies that help improving productivity of bovines in the country and help to improve the quantity of milk and milk products. It is our pleasure that Honorable Secretary, Government of India, is present today. That indicates her commitment to the developmental goals for the dairy business in the country. We heartily welcome you to NDDB on this occasion. We also welcome all the sponsors of the event, guests, and who has traveled from across the globe and from across the country to our NDDB campus. I hope coming 3 days will be very fruitful and will add our knowledge of dairy community of our country and have very positive outcome for the objectives we are all working. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, International Committee for Animal Recording, to please address the gathering.
Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, thank you for welcoming us and hosting this meeting of ICAR. We're very honored to be such warm welcome. It's been a pleasure to discover the Indian dairy sector and the National Dairy Development Board for all the work they do for the Indian dairy sector. This is very impressive, and we've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to invite our members to discover this with us. So I'm really pleased to have the ICAR meeting with our colleagues from IDF and ISO, and we thank our hosts very warmly for the very warm and professional welcome that you've been given us so far. And we look forward to the rest of the week to learn more about the dairy sector in India and how ICAR can collaborate with Indian organizations to improve animal production, animal recording, animal improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. Philip Trossard, Chair, MSSG Science and Program Coordination Committee, IDF, for his address.
Thank you very much. Too short. Yeah. Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, dear ladies and gentlemen. At first, I want to welcome you to this IDF ISO Analytical Week in Anand, India, held in conjunction with the ICAR conference. This is a great opportunity to foster a relationship and collaboration between the organization and the participants with an added value for the global dairy sector. The work done within various meetings contributes to the IDF mission, which is to nourish the world with safe and sustainable dairy. On behalf of the IDF, President Gilles Froment, the General Director Laurence Ricken, the IDF staff, and all the IDF ISO experts of the analytical area, I express our appreciation to the National Dairy Development Board and the organizing committee for hosting and planning this successful event, and especially to Dr. Menesh Shah, Chairman and Managing Director, NDDB, Member Secretary of Indian National Committee of IDF, and Member of IDF Board, Mrs. Alka Upadhyaya, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India, and President of the Indian National Committee of IDF. I also express our gratitude to the sponsor and exhibitor for the essential support for this event, and to the participant attending this event. I wish you a very fruitful week in Anand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Mr. Hans Krusen, Secretary, TC-MMP, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, to share his views.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity for to give a few words for you as a chair of ISO TC34 Subcommission 5 on milk and milk products. So first, let me to follow the words of the former speakers, and to see and give you words and welcome, and the opportunity to welcome you all on behalf of also ISO for this analytical week, and also for ICAR in Anand, India. I'm here being from the Netherlands as a nation that exports about 2/3 of milk to all the places in the world. So I'm fully convinced that the great importance of our work. Standardization is the lubricating oil for the international trade and of great value for the business and consumers all over the world. But from what I've seen so far, the global world of standardization is also a challenging field of expertise with the increasing level of diversity and complexity. With the further past, it's mainly about product quality and process efficiency. We nowadays see standards emerging for many more aspects and related to the food chain, amongst them sustainability and food integrity. And with an increasing speed of technology development and changing consumer trends, global standards will continue to evolve, which certainly will also impact our work on dairy-related standards in the field of analysis. Moreover, the more globalized world of today and the increasing integrity of supply chains have added the ongoing trend of international harmonization and convergence. It's therefore of great importance that organizations like ICAR, IDF and ISO jointly make efforts to make progress on its dynamic playing field. The ICAR, IDF, ISO analytical program is of great help to harmonize the analytical standards of milk and milk products through the producing point of ISO standard sets. In the end, it creates the value and by alignment the regulatory framework and reduces the risk of trade disputes arising from the use of different analytical methods. As such, the ICAR ISO IDF collaboration is jointly contributing to the science-based development of the harmonized standards. Guidelines and codes of practice should be considered of a great good of the major benefit of the global dairy industry. Now here in Anand, lots of work lies ahead. I would like to thank the organizers for the great job done to make this all possible and for their great hospitality. And for you all, I wish you a very fruitful week with many moments of learnings, good discussions, wise decisions, and so on. For those here in Anand, I wish you a pleasant stay, enjoying the meetings, talks, and networking opportunities, and also for the sponsors. And no doubt, the preparation of good relationships, friendships, and many of you colleagues from all corners. I myself shall be around and look forward to meeting many of you in person in the course of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Minesh Shah, Chairman NDDB, to please address the gathering. Please, sir.
Madam Alka Upadhyay, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India, and also the President of INC IDF. Dr. Daniel, President ICAR, Mr. Philip Trossard, Chair MSSG, Mr. Hans Kruzisan, Secretary Technical Committee MMP, all the members of the ICAR board, MDs of various institutes, Sri Amit Vyas, MD Amul Dairy, Sri Sajja, MD NCDFI, MD Vidya, MD all our subsidiary managing directors, Rajesh Subramaniam, Rajesh Nair, Mr. Manish Banlis, Dr. Devanand, all colleagues from IDF, colleagues from ICAR, colleagues from various other countries, all the participants of this distinguished events. I see the representation from the Danish Embassy here, so welcome, madam, to NDDB. All my colleagues from NDDB, GCMMF, Amul, all the Dairy Technology Institute, and all other sister concerns at Anand who have gathered here. As you all know, this is a privileged moment for us. NDDB is celebrating the Diamond Jubilee this year. We are in the 68th year of our operations, and India is also celebrating the International Year of Cooperatives this year. And what India has achieved in last 60 years after the NDDB implemented the Operation Flood with the active support from Government of India, transforming the country from a milk deficit country to not only the self-sufficient, but today also the largest milk producer in the world. We produce almost 239 million metric tons milk during 23-24. I know and I hope that this year the figures will be at least 5% more. And the per capita availability of the milk has increased to 460 grams now, which was hovering just about 100-150 ml per person per day. So all these achievements which has happened is because of the, more than 80 million small farmers. NDDB organized them into cooperatives. And whatever success we have achieved is because of the success of these dairy cooperatives throughout the country. We were instrumental in replicating the Amul, which was a small cooperative formed in Anand. And it was very successful in demonstrating the social and economic development in the rural areas. NDDB replicated throughout the year, and now have more than 20 Amul brands, so to say, or different regional brands like Nandini, Avin, Milkfed, Saras, Sanchi. All these brands all throughout the country, they have emerged out of Amul, and all together they are doing an excellent job for providing the livelihood opportunity to more than 80 million farmers. So in India, it's not just about the business or the commercial activity. Dairying is something which is a livelihood for the small marginal dairy farmers. And in this International Year of Cooperatives, I think it's a privileged moment for us that we are hosting such an important event. And also, if you see the theme of the event, it is sustainable livestock farming through harmonization, technology, and innovation. So, we have passed a lot of time now, and NDDB has started now focusing on the sustainability because, we all know the impacts of the climate change. We see a lot of, environmental issues already cropped in throughout the globe, and sustainable dairying for the smallholder system, especially in the context of India, is very, very important. And NDDB, along with the government of India, have taken several steps in last few years to see that the farmers adopt the practices of sustainable dairying throughout the value chain. If you see the activities of NDDB, I'm sure you were here last few days, and we had the opportunity to showcase what is the Indian dairying, how we are different from the other developed countries in the world in terms of dairying. And NDDB as the organization actually, all the activities right from helping farmers to the, producing more milk and also providing better milk and milk products or safe and hygienic milk and milk products to consumer. We surpass almost all the activities throughout the value chain. And if you see our country, milk and milk products, largely they are consumed by all the age groups, starting from infants to adults. We are a lacto-vegetarian country, means though we don't eat meat, we don't eat egg, but milk or milk product is part of our staple diet. And it is very crucial, for us, therefore, that how we ensure the safety of all these products, the quality of the products, and how we can have the robust testing for the adulterants. Lately we have seen a lot of adulteration happening. The milk fat is replaced by vegetable fat. A lot of products have come, analogs, analogs of cheese, analogs of butter. They are hitting the market, and it's very important to discuss these issues in detail with the institutes like IDF, institutes like ISO and ICAR. And I'm sure that all the deliberations what we have, throughout this conference for next 3 days, we will have lot of discussions on the hygienic indicators or microbial contaminants or, all these safety parameters like the pesticides residue, the antibiotic residues, and how we can ensure the food authenticity of milk and milk products, which is, as I told, a major challenge for us today in identifying whether the product is genuine or not, whether the product meets the standards as declared or not. And such an event, I think, with involving all the stakeholders together and spanning 3-4 days of deliberations and various recommendations will definitely help us in taking some of the policy recommendations, both at the NDDB level and at the Government of India level. I think before I conclude, I'll request or urge all the experts who are present here from throughout the globe to delve on the challenges faced by the Indian farmers. You will have opportunity to see our farming system and suggest ways how we can overcome some of these issues, some of these challenges which everybody is facing. And also, I think, let us see some of the innovative solutions which can help us to mitigate some of these challenges. And knowledge on newer analytical methods will also help in overcoming some of these challenges. The interaction with the experts from across the globe will also build our expertise in dealing these challenges, and also help the small Indian dairy farmers, which will be encouraged to produce more milk, safe milk for our consumers. At NDDB, I can assure you that we will make all our possible efforts to make your stay as comfortable as possible. In case any problem you face, please, there are people attached to you. Our volunteers are always available please come back with any of the support you need. I wish you all for this conference and look forward for some of the recommendations for the betterment of our dairy farmers, and I wish all the best to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India, to please address the gathering. Ma'am, please.
A very good morning to all of you. It's always nice to be here in Anand and in NDDB, and I'm sure you all have been taken good care of, and just as myself, I feel like coming back. It's always a pleasure to come here. During your journey, you will also feel like coming back to Anand again and again. And with this, I compliment each one of you who's over here for this conference. Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President International Committee for Animal Recording, the ICAR. Mr. Philippe Trossard, Chair MSSG, Science and Program Coordination Committee, International Dairy Federation. Mr. Hans Christen, Secretary TCMMP, the International Organization for Standardization. Dr. Minesh Shah, the veteran chairman of NDDB and who is the host of the events. Members of the ICAR board, delegates from various countries, invited guests from organizations within India. It is indeed a pleasure to have you all here for this prestigious event of the ICAR Annual Conference 2025 and IDF ISO Analytical Week 2025. We all know the importance of these institutions and their relevance even today. The International Committee for Animal Recording is a pioneering organization in the field of animal performance recording. Recording is the basis of any improvement program, and ICAR provides crucial guidelines to harmonize the recording systems on various aspects of livestock production, including dairying. India is represented by NDDB in the ICAR and has been contributing to development of performance recording systems in India. It is my pleasure to say that NDDB is organizing this conference for the first time in India. The International Dairy Federation, we all know the relevance. It has been bringing the global dairy community together since its inception in 1903. Committed to a scientific rigor and technical expertise, the IDF pioneered the path in promoting sustainable and safe dairy practices, shaping up of the policies, standards, and regulations worldwide. India has been an active member of IDF and has been contributing to various technical committees. We hosted one International Dairy Federation conference in 2022. Happy to share that we will be hosting the 2027 conference also in India. And in between, we had the Indo-Pacific IDF Summit or conference in Kochi. And I met some of you over there. As president of the International Committee of the International Dairy Federation, I am elated to see all of you here. The International Organization for Standardization, and I think at this point in time, the challenges which were mentioned for some of the speakers, I think ISO has a very, very critical role to play. It is an independent, non-government international organization that brings together the global experts together to agree on the best ways possible on this matter. ISO has been providing standards on various aspects, including quality measurements, food safety management, and food product analysis. the Bureau of Indian Standards represents India in the ISO, and several initiatives taken by ISO have been very relevant for the country as well. We all know that India as a country has a population of about 80 million farmers who are involved in dairying, and they're all small and marginal farmers. The organization of Indian dairy farmers into cooperatives, milk producer companies, farmer producer organizations has gone a long way now, of course with its seeds having been sown here itself in Anand. Today, we boast of a very robust cooperative movement in the world. The cooperative movement led by Anand, led by Amul, and as many number of organizations that Dr. Shah mentioned, are contributing in changing the rural economies. The rate of growth in the dairy sector has been phenomenal. In the last decade itself, we have grown at a CAGR of about 7%. The addition to milk has been very high, from 354 grams per day. Now we are at 370 grams per day availability. The contribution to the overall agriculture GVA is immense. It is now about 30%, and there has been a 6% increase over the last decade. Even today, 46% of our people in the country are involved in agriculture. With a country of this size, where so many people are still involved in agriculture, and agriculture itself is facing a lot of challenges today, with diminishing land holding sizes, lowering of productivity, the climate change issues, etc. It is this sector which is continuing to support the farmers in their growth, economic growth. Needless to mention, this has brought about immense women empowerment in the villages, with cash income coming in the hands of the women. And this is not a small thing, because it is with this small income coming from the dairy sector, we have seen this level of education going high and high. In one of the conferences held right here in this conference, where we celebrated the success of women dairy farmers, and each one of the women who came up to talk over here mentioned how they grew from 2 animals to now 100, 200, and many of them having turnover of more than $1 million. Each one of them emphasized that this money has been used for education of their children. Many of them were able to sponsor education of their children abroad. So this is the kind of relevance that we have in the dairy sector today. Currently, we are facing certain challenges. Globally, we are facing certain challenges. We are in a phase where the consumer is also very aware. But at the same time, people are trying to bring in bad milk quality into the market. There has been, I also must mention over here, there has been a propaganda, there has been an agenda, well-planned agenda, to propagate other forms, the analogous dairy products, like veganism has been spoken about, where people have been, especially the youngsters, have been influenced to quit milk, quoting lactose intolerance. We in India, each one of us went to school with a glass of milk, and in the night had a glass of milk. And no one knew of lactose intolerance. Everybody was very happy with it, but it is some kind of a propaganda which is affecting our market. In this trying time, it is important for us to concentrate on the quality of milk, to see that allegations that come to this sector are alleviated, or they are not found to be profound or of any significance. A lot of things are being talked about AMR, antimicrobial resistance, and how the antimicrobial resistance in the form of milk is passing into the human consumption. In India, I'm happy to share with you that the AMR content has been found to be negligible, almost at par with the European standards. But all this facade that is being made has to be continuously challenged by our industry itself. I was very happy to see in the exhibition various forms of food and milk analyzers which will ensure good quality milk coming into the market. One of the other important challenges is moving towards organized dairy sector. In India, the challenge is that about 40% of our milk or 50% of the milk, partially it is consumed at home and partially it goes into the market as informal, in the form of informal milk sector. It is there that a lot of problem is happening, and we need to see that how we resolve these problems. We need to organize cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, milk cooperative societies or companies, and get people in the fray of organized dairy farming. Unlike in the West, where the dairy farming is organized in big commercial farms, we do not have these big commercial farms, but we have the dairy structure present over here. A lot of other things I think will be important at this cusp, which is the automation. Again, taking a leaf from the exhibition here today, the rotating milk parlors, so on and so forth, a lot of things are now available. The dairying practice will have to change. The dairy farms need better management. I think this is the time when we need to talk about better, healthier dairy farm management systems. Because so far we were fragmented, but now as we move on a path of aggregation or formalization of the sector, these things will become easier. Through the cooperative unions like Amul, through like Nandini, like Sachi, so on and so forth, which have a reach to the people, to the common man or the farmers, I think this task will be much similar. I think we should take upon the agenda of clean milking systems, clean milking strategies. It is just about awareness. It's not capital intensive. We just need to invest our time and train the farmers. The success of animal husbandry in India rests around 3 or 4 things. We are the biggest producer of milk in the world. 25% of the milk of the world is from India. We are the second largest producer of eggs. We are the 4th largest producer of meat. And meat also has been growing at a very fast pace of about 7 to 8% CAGR. Next to meat growth is the milk growth over here. Now, with all of this, we continuously need to evolve our strategies for better breed management also. And this is something which is very, very important, and a lot of work needs to be done in India. Many of the countries' delegates who are over here, in their countries, they have already done a lot of good work. We have started the process now. We were in a phase where we got the exotic breeds from other countries and we developed the crossbreds in the country. But there is a lot of enthusiasm now in the farmers, and there is a lot of research to say that the indigenous cattle breed also needs improvement, for which several of our programs are being used, like the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. We are using that for breed improvement, artificial insemination, the sex-sorted semen, and IVF. I think for this fast breed improvement or speed genetic gain, IVF will be a game changer. We need to have proper codes or SOPs for IVF procedures to be followed in the country. We need more manpower, trained manpower, and I think at this opportune time, I would request NDDB, with the help of several partners across the globe, we must invest ourselves in training this skilled manpower. Because if we do this, I'm sure we would be able to increase the pace of genetic gain. I have already spoken about the National Program for Dairy Development, how we are moving towards collectivization of milk. I'm very proud to mention over here that India leads the largest animal vaccination program. As a country, we are striving now towards becoming FMD free. We have done about 110 crores of, which is about 11 million doses of FMD vaccination till date. It's a very big program to have all the vaccines produced nationally in the country, to have the cold chain maintained. India is a huge country. To have the last mile, to meet the last mile challenges and provide good cold chain mechanism for vaccine delivery is also, I think, a very, very important milestone that has been met. We are consistently working towards curbing the episodes of diseases in animals. FMD, for instance, we have been able to control it in a big way. I would also like to mention over here that with so much of milk that we are producing in the country, we need to also export, and for which we are creating FMD-free zones in 9 states on a priority basis, where the episodes of disease occurrence has been very, very low or negligible. And I think this is a time when each country will also need to think about dairy in 2 ways. 1, to protect their farmers because it's a very sensitive subject, and 2, what is the opportunity that lies for export? There are many countries which are not self-sufficient in milk, and how do we cross the borders? What are the trade facilitation mechanisms that can be taken up? I think that's also very important. And in all of this, while I talk about trade, while I talk about good quality milk, I think the deliberations that will be held here today will be very, very important and critical. I would request Dr. Minesha that at the end of the conference, and I'm sure you would be doing that, there would be a strategy paper or an approach paper that would be developed. This could be shared with us, and so that we will also be able to see what are the new policies that we need to put in place. The smaller ruminants are something on which we haven't done much work, but I think now is the time we need to work on the smaller ruminants also. Very good work has been done in Gujarat itself on camel milk. Camel milk has become a premium commodity in Dubai. The camel milk chocolates in Dubai are so very much talked about. Same efforts have been done by Amul over here. We need to also see the nutraceutical value of camel milk, how it can be used. There are several references that it reduces diabetes, etc. But all this also has to be codified. I am happy to share that India has developed a national digital database for animals and the farmers and the owners. I guess this is the biggest animal database that we have created, with a 15-digit unique ID number with each of the animals tagged. I was very interested in seeing one of the stalls where they said that at the time of tagging, you could also take the tissue, and this tissue can then be stored for knowing the breed and the quality of that animal. I think this is something that we would also like to do. I can assure you that Government of India would give all needed support in various dimensions that are being spoken about. At the international level, you will set standards, but it is for us at the national level to implement. And I assure you that India will not fall short. There are many other things that need to be spoken about, like global warming, climate change. These are also issues that come up, and we will have to take cognizance of these issues also. I also wish that the business meetings and technical sessions during this event will yield solutions to many existing issues and help technocrats gear up the challenges ahead. We look forward for the recommendations, as I mentioned, emerging out of the deliberations and technical sessions. And we would like to assure you that any of these suggestions or all of the suggestions that come up, we would take up for implementation. Thank you all very much, and I hope you continue to have a good time in Anand and have a comfortable stay. NDDB with Dr. Minesh at its head always ensures that these events are very well curated, on time, and also takes good care of the guests. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Madam. I now request Mr. S. Rajiv, Executive Director, NDDB, to propose vote of thanks.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As we conclude this inaugural ceremony of the ICAR Annual Conference and IDF ISO Analytical Week, on behalf of the Dairy Board and its chairman, it's my privilege and honor to thank each one of you for being here today and contributing very substantial to this event. In particular, I would like to thank our Honorable Secretary, Alka Upadhyay ma'am, for having spared time out of her busy schedule. The Parliament is in session. Even then, she has been kind enough to come here and address all of us. Thank you very much, ma'am. And she has highlighted a few of these issues. See, among them, she has given a very nice overview of the Indian dairy sector. And she's 2 or 3 issues which she has highlighted. One is, she has brought out very clearly the importance of dairying in the agriculture sector, which with all the challenges the agriculture sector is facing today, ma'am has been able to bring out why dairying is important for this farmers, especially the small farmers of this country. And the other aspect ma'am has been able to highlight is why dairying is extremely important for the women of this country and their livelihoods, actually. Ma'am, thank you so much for your very kind words. And our chairman, Dr. Minesh, has been, he has also highlighted the issues relating to the quality of milk in this country, in the background of which this conference is taking place. Thank you, sir. And Dr. Daniel Lufabe, President ICAR. So thank you so much, sir, for coming. And the board of ICAR who is here and the other delegates from ICAR, very sincere thanks for all of you. And also, sir, for taking the decision to have this conference in Anand. I think there were some apprehensions initially for having this in Anand, but then you've been kind enough to agree to have this conference in Anand. I suppose you will all enjoy your stay here and the deliberations. Mr. Philip Trossard, Chair of the Methods Standard Steering Group and member Science and Program Coordination Committee of IDF, and all of the delegates from IDF. Again, a thanks from our side for having come here, and I look forward to very meaningful deliberations with all of you in the coming days. Hans Krusen, Secretary Technical Committee on Milk and Milk Products of ISO, and all the other delegates from ISO also, I express my sincere thanks for you for being here. Among others, so we have about 100 delegates from abroad who have traveled all the way to come here, and thanks each one of you for having taken out your time and visit us. I suppose you will get a very, very meaningful idea of how the Indian sector works, and many of you would have been here before, but for many others, it would be probably the first time you're here, and I hope we are able to showcase our industry in a manner that would benefit your understanding. And we have another 100 delegates from the country, a total of 200 delegates. Thanks each one of you for coming here. We have a lot of delegates, we have a lot of dignitaries who have come here. Dr. Kelawala. Kelawala Saab, thanks for being here. Amit Vyas, thanks for coming. So he is the managing director of Amul, where it all started, the Indian Dairy Revolution. And we have MDs from our subsidiary companies, all of them are here. And many of our associated organizations within Anand. And I would also like to thank all the sponsors and the event partners and the organizing teams and the volunteers who have contributed to making this event a success. Also my friends and colleagues from NDDB as well as other organizations in Anand who have turned out in large numbers today. And I wish all the delegates and the people who have come from abroad and within the country a very pleasant stay and a very set of meaningful deliberations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. As we conclude the inaugural ceremony, we convey our thanks to all the dignitaries on the dais and participants for your presence. We have our colleagues from the press present here. The dignitaries on the dais are requested to proceed for the press release in the new boardroom. All the invited guests are requested to proceed for the refreshments outside the auditorium. We are now taking a short break of 10 minutes for rearranging things. And the delegates attending the plenary sessions are requested to please gather in this auditorium for the plenary session at 11:25 a.m. Thank you.
We begin with the plenary session of International Committee for Animal Recording. To take forward the sessions, I now invite Dr. Daniel Lefebvre, President ICAR, to please take over the session, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this plenary session. Given that it's the first time that ICAR is holding its annual meeting in India and really in this region of the world, we thought it was appropriate to spend a bit of time to introduce and talk about some of the services and the work that ICAR and Interbull are doing for the members across the world. So to do that, we have two speakers, Martin Burke, who is the interim CE of ICAR, and Tuan Ruzen, who is the Interbull Center Director. So I'll first ask Martin to start and talk about ICAR services.
Thank you, Daniel. See if we can get the presentation up. So as Daniel said, I'd just like to share with the audience some of our services, and thank Sylvia for putting most of these slides together. So look, what I'm going to share with you is just a quick intro to ICAR, a bit about our standardization and our guidelines, and then a piece about our certification and services, and any questions and answers you may have. So look, we have a vision in ICAR, so we want to express it as we want to be the universal language for sustainable animal production. That's a high-level vision, but how we get that done is through our mission, which is to be the global provider of independent guidelines, standards, certification for animal identification, recording, and evaluation. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically it covers what we do. And how we do that, it's all about, we look at the three circles on your left. It's about creating synergy on one side. At the same time, we have to be responsible for what we do, as we, a lot of people will look at our guidelines, take them on board as read, and will implement them. And likewise, we have to continually improve. We can't stand still. We have to keep getting feedback from the market, keep getting feedback from our farmers, so that our working groups are working on the relevant topics, so that our guidelines become and stay relevant. So where are we and who are we? So we've around 142 members, and I can add that should be 132. We have 82 full members and 50 associate members. So we're global. Even though we started in Rome in 1951, we have members from all over the globe. We have a bit of a flat spot in Africa. We had some workshops there, and we still have some work to do there. But the rest of the world is pretty covered. So in all of that, we're here in India, which is great, because the diversity across different farming systems in different regions, as Daniel mentioned, is difficult. So what one thing might apply in Ireland might not be so suitable in India, and vice versa. So we have to be cognizant of that, and our working groups are reflective of the different farming systems in the different regions of the world. Just to tell you a little difference about the full members and the associate members. The full members are organizations who provide operations or services to farmers directly, like milk recording, providing genetic evaluations, herd books, etc. And our associate members are really those manufacturers or those companies that provide services to our members and indeed to farmers. So typically they would be the milk meters, the FOS machines, the Bentley machines, the Delta machines. All of those are all indeed associate members of ICAR, and it's very important for us to keep them close to us, because if we fall behind in what's happening in the technological world, our guidelines will fall behind. So we work very closely with them, but at the same time, it's only the full members who have the full rights to vote on whether a guideline becomes a guideline or not. So it's a kind of you're sailing close to the wind. It's important that we keep them close, but to keep ourselves independent and to keep the science behind it independent, we keep the manufacturers very close, but one step removed from our approval process. So, as we saw some who were this morning, we have 16 working groups and task forces, 190 experts, we've added 10 since this morning, and practitioners worldwide from our member database. We have 23 sections of recording guidelines, all available, switching to Wiki very soon. And in the last, well, this year, 2025, along with our ring test, our proficiency test for milk analysis, we have released a proficiency test, a ring test for bovine semen quality. That will be shipped out in early May. So that's another first for ICAR to help standardize and harmonize the approach and SOPs for bovine for straw quality assessment. So how we work, I mean, we operate really, I guess it's very important that we collaborate with the likes of IDF and ISO and OIE and many other organizations internationally. But we do like to also look at ICAR is, as well as horizontal, we're also vertically integrated. So we like to think our guidelines are actually practical and useful on farm. So how it works really is that our working groups provide information to our member organizations. They come back and share and propose ideas on how we'd modify, how we should change and how we would evolve, and then we implement them on the ground. And to communicate that, we depend on our members who are operating the services to communicate that to farmers and breeders. And look, it's a long list of questions, but why do we need standards? You know, this is a definition from the EPA. You know, they are developed by subject matter experts. So I'm here, I'm just like I suppose the conductor, but it's the experts in the groups who will tell us and ICAR what should be in the guidelines. They are approved by the board and our members and get published that way. But they have to be relevant and to solve business problems that our members have, whether it's now validating sensors or whether it's producing bovine semen ring tests. It's harder to develop the non-standards, but more economical long term. So it's hard work getting collaboration, and sometimes it's not only technical but political. But that's okay, and it makes the standards more robust. Again, clear understanding meanings for data for all users. It's again, we have to use the language that is interpretable and understood. We need to make sure that they're accessible, so that we don't charge or not hidden behind a wall. So basically that they're harmonized, but they're also accessible by all. The reuse of data and software for multiple purposes. So again, we try to link between our working groups to make sure that there's collaboration between the two of them, so that we develop standards that are useful across. After all, it's one farmer. We don't want to fire hose them with lots of different rules and regulations. How we were formed, I mean, in 1951, was basically out of milk recording organizations in the various countries in Europe saying that my 305 calculation is this and yours is a little bit better, a little bit worse. And then a discussion started, well, how do we standardize and harmonize these calculations to allow comparison? And that's exactly what ICAR does. We provide guidelines so that you can compare data from one country to another, compare whether it's a bull-proof or whether it's a 305-day milk yield. Also, the retrievability of records is important. There's no point in collecting data and keeping it in a locked room. So it's important that we have things like the Animal Data Exchange that can help us move and retrieve data consistently as we move between countries and between regions. And ultimately, the idea of any standard guideline is to raise all boats. So we want to raise the quality. You heard the Secretary of the Minister of Agriculture talking this morning, how important it is that we keep on improving the quality of what we do. And the only way we do that is by measuring and feedback loops and improving. So that's why we think it's important, the work we do. We call them, we call ours guidelines, and the reason why we don't call them standards is that they are optional. It's up to each country and each user to use them. Sometimes our governments or competent authorities read them into law in the event of ID certification, for instance. A lot of countries would put in that you have to be ICAR certified if you want to sell a tag in the country. But we call them guidelines because really it's the spirit of this is what our experts think are the best thing to do. Use it as a reference and build your own system around these standards. You can see they're all available on our website. They're currently in PDF. In the next week, Cesare and the team are looking at switching them to Wiki, which makes them a lot more a living document, and it will help our working groups to churn them as things, you know, years ago, guidelines were only updated and approved at this General Assembly. It was an annual event. We can't survive. We have to be a lot more flexible and responsive than that in current days. So we're looking at moving to a wiki, and indeed the approval cycle will also have to change and reflect that evolution. But they're available on our website. You see the website at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to go in, feed back to us. They're always back to the groups that develop them. So as I said, we have made many guidelines. They're all there on the left side of the screen. We are in the process of moving to a wiki, like Wikipedia, exactly the same principle. Yeah, you can go and look and link between the different standards and guidelines. The other aspect is, I suppose, is best practices for recording, describing the guidelines. You know, trait definition, how do we standardize it? What data do we record for certain traits? If I'm in Ireland, I'd like to be comparable to what's happening in Germany or in India or in Chile. So it's important that we can compare and we're harmonized, and the frequency of recording, etc., is standardized. With some examples there from the AMS data, we're looking at milking speed, that meal hustings and the dairy cattle milk recording, milking speed, box time they're looking at, failed, interrupted, missing milking. If we go to different manufacturers, different robots, you'll find that there's slight differences. Trying to get those guys to work together to say, okay, at least there's a definition that we can all agree on, and that makes it easier for the farmers. It makes it easier for genetic evaluation houses to actually compare afterwards. The rumination, I think the work done by Christa's group on working with the manufacturers on the sensors that define rumination will also be a case for us, the ICAR and IDF are working on. So onto the certification services. So the first one is really around the tags. So what we do in ICAR is that we have Section 10, which actually delineates and outlines the test protocols for certifying an ear tag of an animal. It goes through a whole suite of tests, pull tests, interference, environmental chambers, radiation tests, the whole lot. So if your country hasn't got this written into your statutes, or if it's not a requirement, I would urge, you heard the Minister this morning talk, or the Secretary this morning, talking about how they can affect, if they can, for instance, introduce the requirement for ICAR certificate tags, it would help them build their whole recording database that they obviously have put a lot of money into, but at the same time, if the tag falls off, then all that data associated with that animal is lost because it's all linked to the ID. So for a few cents more, you get quality tags, and so some of our manufacturers are in exhibition outside. You can see that the tag will last. We will stand over it. It'll be certified, and you'll know it's gone through a rigorous test. So again, that's why it's important. If I'm in India, Ireland, Germany, as I said, if I know that I have an ICAR certified tag, it's at a certain level. Similar with milk recording milk meters and milk samplers, very much like the ID, we also have test labs that test milk meters. So a manufacturer will come to us saying, I have a milk meter, I want to get validated or I want to get certified. We will then bring it out a test plan using one of our test houses and go and test that product on farm. There's a specific procedure for that under Section 11 and 12 now for the inline stuff. So we will then test that and produce a report, and if it passes, we will certify that, so that if your member, our member I should say, is going to a farm, and the farmer is recorded by these milk meters, at least he's guaranteed the data coming out of it is at a certain level again. So that's the second part of the process. And then we go into, I suppose, the genetic centers like DNA laboratories. We have, a lot of our members obviously take the data that we record and produce indexes for genetic improvement. Again, the Ministry talked about it this morning. The quality of that data is really the quality and the output of that genetic index is dependent on the quality of the data coming into it. So it's our job to make sure that the data reaching the genetic evaluation houses is at a certain quality. In the world of SNP technology and genotyping, we have, through Interbull, released a process for verifying the method of, or crediting the method of DNA parentage identification and parentage discovery. And Tuan will go through some of that later on. In between the recording of milk volumes and the genetic evaluations, there's a step of milk analysis, which most of, we'll have an intense week with the ISO, IDF committees, looking at different aspects of our milk analysis guidelines, and also the ISO reference 8196. So we want to make sure that we work together on that, and that's what this week is about, so that we have commonality between ICAR's groups and the IDF and ISO groups. They're an established team. They've been working for years, and they continue to evolve, whether it's evolving things like, lately in the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually certified the milk analyzers in the lab, working with the manufacturers again. So we are also not only looking at the lab, but we're going outside the lab, so and that produces its own challenges, because we have two worlds colliding with the milk recording guys and the milk analysis guys, and fitting them together is what ICAR needs to do as we go forward. Take the advice that we have from the milk analysis and take the practical advice vice versa on the recording guys to the milk analysis. So you can see there on-farm, at-line. These are products that you take the milk off, but on the farm you test it. But we're seeing more and more on-farm in-line analysis. And that, again, is part of the future. So ICAR needs to, I suppose, come out of its silos where we had a milk analysis and we had milk recording to come together to match what's happening in the market. Ultimately, at the end of it, we have to produce guidelines, and we have to produce, as a member, we have to guarantee what we do is following these guidelines. So ICAR also has a kind of an audit service where we go and audit, as I mentioned this morning, audit our members for compliance with the guidelines, so that they are using milk recording meters that are approved, they are using IDs that are certified, they are using Interbull genetic evaluations that have been validated, they are using DNA SNP calculations through accreditation labs. So all of that is audited, and when we produce the certificate of quality, which you saw this morning, it's an important feedback for our members. Just going back to some of the specifics, as Sylvia wrote this, we can see the slight bias of the proficiency test, but this is an important piece of work, just to show how it develops over the years and the value for the members, is that we started this, maybe, 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's been going a long time, maybe 15, with Olivia Leary and others in Actalia. But it has shown that to be really those who are involved in it, the 60, 70 labs, you can see that they're getting more concentrated in their Z&R scores, and that's really showing the value back to them. We'll hopefully do the same with the bull semen, as mentioned earlier, and we'll see that that's just kicking off this year, but we'd hope to have the same improvement as we saw with the milk analysis. So this explains it better, actually. So over the years, you see on the left, between 2016 and 2019, we quite have, the graph describes the distance from assigned values. And you can see when we started, it was quite a good spread. But now when you look on, it's on 10 years more, 13 years, you can see it's concentrated more. So when a lab who's participating in these 127 labs is pretty close to getting a record the same as if it was in Ireland, as it was in Chile, or wherever it was. So the value of that to the customers, knowing that they independently can see, well, this is where my dot is, I'm pretty much close to everyone else in the world. If I was away on the left, either they're all wrong, which is unlikely, or I need some improvements to do. So it's a very simple tool, but we do this twice a year. So this is a valuable, I suppose, a valuable service to our members on proficiency tests. That's run by Sylvia and the team in Actalia as well. So thanks for that. I mentioned this morning about validation. So as I said, when we write a guideline, we have a protocol, and to get certified, we test against that protocol, and we say, yes, this is now certified independently. However, as I said, there's a lot of products in the market, sensors that are measuring milk, whether it's in line or offline or at line. And our members, our farmers are using it, and the data has been presented to our members, and they're saying to us, well, is this good enough to use? Can you tell us more about it? Can you categorize it first, classify it? So we've released this year a validation program, and basically, as opposed to us testing against the standard, we're going to ask the manufacturers, what are your claims regarding this device? What are the levels of accuracy that you claim to produce in this? And then we will test against that, and then provide a report attesting to that value has been met, or it does what it says on the tin, if you like. And that can be quite useful for our members, that they can say, well, okay, their own claims and their own specifications, I'm comfortable using for farm management, but maybe not for genetic evaluation. Or maybe they can say, well, that's actually quite good enough for genetic evaluation, and I can run with it. But at least we're telling our members to say, well, yeah, we're categorizing it and classifying it. So you'll see more about that in the next few months, where Stephen Sievert and Jose are working, and we'll work with a webinar in the next month or two to update our members and also our manufacturers on that. I'm not going to go into the Interbull services because Tuan will cover that in the next presentation, so I'll leave that to Tuan, and he'll know a lot more about it than I would, for sure. I showed this morning. I don't expect to go through it in that much detail, but it's very important that we keep the young people engaged, and we have Sarah, Maria, Fazil, Colin, Micah, and Michael all chomping at the bit to work with our groups to get this stuff across the line and get reports back to us, and also hopefully get them engaged with ICAR. So we're looking forward to that. That's the end of my presentation. But before, Sylvia asked me to just say, for your program, that probably isn't updated in your program, technical session 3 and technical session 6 are merged on Thursday at 11:30 to 1 o'clock. So just keep that in your diary. And that's it for me. So thanks for your kind attention. I'll take any questions you might have, because I think we have a bit of time before Tuan's. Or if not, that's fine too. So thank you very much. I'll hand you over to Tuan.
Thank you, Martin. And going on about one of these last slides you mentioned, is technical sessions. There's a technical session number 2. I didn't put it on my slides, but there's an Interbull session this afternoon as well, so you're very welcome to that. Right, so yeah, I want to, and I've been invited to, and I'm glad with the opportunity to talk about the services provided under Interbull. So Interbull is a permanent subcommittee of ICAR. In the room are the chair of the committee, Matthew Schaefer, and another member, Gerben de Jong, is sitting here at front. He's also the chair of the technical committee of Interbull. I'm the director of the Interbull Center, which is the operational unit of Interbull that actually provides the service. We're based out of the Swedish Agricultural University in Uppsala. So the objective of Interbull is to provide the dairy industry with accurate genetic information that importers and exporters can use to facilitate the selection of the best genetics from different countries for different environments and for different breeding goals. So the ways that we try to deliver those objectives, and what I want to talk about today is the international evaluations, the validations, in a similar line with what Martin has been talking about, and the exchange of data. So there's many countries in the world that have different breeds, their own breeding programs, their own breeding evaluation programs. and very good one at that as well. But they are, the results from these programs and the breeding values are not comparable across countries. It would be the same as comparing a rupee with a euro with a dollar. You need to know somehow how they translate to each other. So the reason that Interbull exists, that the Interbull Center exists, is to make a conversion between those breeding values between different countries. And a method that's used for that is a method called MACE, Multiple Across Country Evaluations. And that helps with the countries, without going into the technical details. Countries are able to compare and understand the values of foreign bulls. They are able to make more accurate estimation of breeding values within their own countries. The comparison of local bulls and foreign bulls helps also with international trade, and the foreign bulls can be put on the scale within the country itself, so it'll be clear to farmers when they choose a bull that perhaps the best bull from a foreign country is not the best one within their own environment. So, it also improves the national breeding programs because the genetic pool is broadened to a global pool, so that's where farmers can select from. We provide these maize services for mainly 6 breeds, groups, and then there's some other smaller breeds included within those as well. So the Holstein, Jersey, Guernsey, red dairy cattle encompasses a few red dairy breeds, the brown Swiss and Simmental. And there are 9 trade groups with a total of 66 traits. So within production, I gave an example, there's milk, protein, and fat. But also within all the other trade groups, there's multiple individual traits that farmers would like to select their animals on. As of this year, we have 2 new trade groups, claw health and metabolic diseases. And especially, I think, with claw health, it's clear that that's coming from one of the other ICAR working groups, so the functional traits from Krista. And I think it's really nice for us to see that that's actually, in the end, resulting in an international evaluation that can bring value back to the farmers worldwide. Direct gestation length is the other trait that we added to our portfolio this year, but that's included in calving, in the group calving traits. Very much linked to the evaluations and also applied to the same breeds and same trade groups are the validations of the national estimated breeding values. So we receive the breeding values from the various countries for our calculations and to provide the international evaluations. So it's good to have a good measurement on those. So the validation methods that we apply are an independent assessment of the quality of those EBVs. It also means that we can be assured, and farmers can be assured, that the statistical models applied in the countries are sound. And if there is any bias in the data, if there's the data or the models don't fit within the thresholds that have been set, then such data could be rejected. So that's one of the aims. We have high standards. We want to live up to those standards. So rubbish in, rubbish out. The validation method is one way of rejecting data, and then we would be using all data from an organization. But it also, the feedback on those validations helps national genetic evaluation centers with tweaking their systems so they can improve their national evaluation systems. So twofold aims, really. So here is also a map, different color, Martin, but there is an overlap between the countries, of course, that Interbull provides its services to, and the ICAR member countries, because our services are provided to ICAR member organizations or organizations that may have been nominated by those members. So we're in 5 continents in 34 different countries. So, and there's a lot of work happening in my team on a very strict schedule. So the reason one of the reasons nobody of my team is here today, and a lot of the Interbull users are not here today. The first Tuesday of April is the release of our first routine evaluation, and that happens to be today. So there's 3 routine evaluations every year. There's also 3 test evaluations. And there's a lot of work involved for the national genetic evaluation centers there as well, because they supply the data and they need to evaluate the test results. They need to reformat and re-evaluate the results that we get to them for the routine evaluations as well, because those routine evaluations, that's the ones that get published 3 times per year as well. Here's some numbers to what is involved in our evaluation in December. So that was the last one before today. So this is about 54 million animals in our pedigree database. We get almost 15 million EBVs from around the world, and we give back 121. And that we do 3 times per year for the routine evaluations and 3 times for the test evaluations. So maize is very much related to traditional genetic evaluations. So phenotypes and pedigree information is used in there. But we all know about the genomic era. That's where we're in today. And there's 2 genomic evaluations that we performed since 2021 for young genomically tested bulls, and also an international genomic evaluation. Both of those also are linked with a validation on a genomic validation test, similar to all these. The principles and the objectives are similar to what we do with maize. It also gave the opportunity to exchange data that comes out of genomic evaluation. So since 2018, we have a data hub in which we exchange both genotypes and actually the results of such genetic tests. The list of countries is a bit smaller. The service is also not so long around. So the Interbull evaluations are since 1996. This only since 2018. Those organizations who can apply to this are again our ICAR members or are associated to ICAR members. And the principle behind it is that there is a lot of data that is available around the world and of interest to other countries. And in the past, I would say data gets exchanged through emails or maybe even paper records at some stage. And that can be quite time-consuming, and it can also be more prone to errors. With the SNP data, it's even more complicated because you're talking about a lot more data than the test results, for example. So we have the Interbull Data Hub, where we exchange that same data. We facilitate the exchange of that data, where organizations can submit data to our central database, and then also take away from that database the information that they need or that they have access to. And that can improve the animal information, it can improve certificates for pedigrees or pedigree analysis. So one of those is the exchange of the results of genetic tests. And here's a list with all the tests for Holstein genetic traits, and another one for the brown Swiss genetic traits that are actually being exchanged. These are traits that have been agreed by the World Holstein Friesian Federation as official traits on their list to be exchanged, to be reported when it occurs. And the list for brown Swiss has been agreed with the brown Swiss community, who is also involved in our evaluations. So the idea is that organizations, national organizations who are already associated with us can provide that type of information. And sometimes that leads to extra information for a country on animals that they have in use in their own country, but they didn't get those results. Or they might have different results for the same animal, and then you have conflicts, and you try to find out, because it's, I think it's a bad idea to work on the assumption that the wrong data is good to keep using. So there's a platform where we assist organizations with addressing those conflicts. Together with the maze evaluations, we distribute this data back to the national organizations. And we have it in place for Holstein and Brown Swiss, because they have agreed on codes across borders and on how they want to exchange this. But it's also possible for the other breeds that we perform evaluations for. So it's important because you can identify animals that are carriers. It also means you may not need to test an animal and spend money on that same animal that a neighboring country has done already. Organizing a platform to reduce the conflicts is useful, and the system has been set up that we can add any new genetic tests that come out with the agreement of the organizations that are behind it to get exchanged fairly quickly. So genetic traits, genetic conditions, are based on genetic tests on SNP mutations. So it's only the results we were sharing there. In our international genotype exchange platform, we enabled the exchange of the actual SNP data. So it's a lot more data, as I said, and today it's available to all the cattle breeds. So it's fairly flexible, and we're actually expanding it to other species within the ICAR remit as well, because there's the SNP data itself doesn't seem to be that different when you work across all species. So the first service we rolled out in 2018 was the exchange of parent SNP data. So it's Martin alluded to it already. It's a set of 200 SNPs or a set of 554 SNPs, depending on whether you are only interested in parentage verification. So you know who the parents are, but you just want to double check. Then you only need 200 SNPs. But if you don't know who the parents are and you have a database with pedigree structure and SNP information on those animals, you can also find out which one of those animals might be the parents. So we do not perform the parentage verification or discovery, but we facilitate by exchanging this. So it's buckets of data. If you provide Holstein cows or Holstein bulls, you can take out all the Holstein cows and all the Holstein bull information that has been put in there by all the other countries that are involved. And it means that farmers also have a more certain view of what the identity of the animal is that they have in their barns. And again, it eliminates the cost of genotyping duplication. Oh, wrong way. So SNP, the parentage SNP exchange was 200 or 500 SNPs. The database can also handle a large, much bigger data set, so up to 70,000 SNP panels is quite common now. Where the exchange of the parentage SNP was very much designed not to be able to perform genomic evaluations. This is actually encouraging and helping organizations exchange data so they can build up a reference population to start with or to expand their genomic evaluation systems. Anyone who has access to the database has full access to their own data, and anything shared with anybody else, anything shared by anybody else with them, and organizations can decide themselves which other organizations they share each individual animal or SNP piece of SNP information with. So that's our services, and the underpinning words that Martin already gave about ID tags. Now, we're not transferring ID tags, but we do transfer IDs across the world when we do our evaluations, and having the same ID for the same animal within our database is basically crucial to our work to be able to do it accurately. So the Interbull ID is a unique identifier used across all our participating organizations, and it's fundamental to the data and to the services. So the first step that we often go through with new Interbull users is to make sure that the animal IDs are correct and they verify with the same animal in other countries. So it's the animal ID, but also, of course, accuracy in the services, how we roll them out. Our aim is to be unbiased. We are independent. We're based within a university, not within an evaluation center. And we are honest about the results and the outcomes. So if the validation says that you're outside the thresholds, then I'm sorry, but your data cannot be used. We'll use your old data, and next time you have another chance to validate your data and get new data in. So the whole processes are actually really, really transparent as well. So we earned our certification in ISO 9001 in 2016. It's always a lot of work to get it in place, and it's quite a lot of work to maintain it as well, but it's very much worth it. We've not had any non-conformities since that time in our audits. And I think as important, or maybe even more important, we haven't recalled any of our data after we released the results. So it means that our users can have great confidence in the results that are coming out when they're officially released. So I already mentioned we have a session this afternoon. Every other year we have the Interbull annual meeting jointly with ICAR. So next year we will indeed join ICAR in Italy, and I look forward to it. And this year we'll be in Kentucky, and the deadline for abstracts is still open. So you have a week to submit some more abstracts if you want to present at the meeting. And if you want even more information, you can go to our website. It's just been revamped, and I think there's a lot more detail about what I told. And I want to thank you for your attention, and if there are time for questions, I will take them. Thank you.
If you have any questions, our volunteers are available here with the microphones. So just in case, you can raise your hand and our volunteers will reach you.
I have a question. It's a good presentation. I have one small doubt. Yeah. So the query is, when you have millions of data, as you said, for genetic evaluation in maize, how often do you estimate genetic parameters? Because I presume that with genomics, parameters are changing very fast, and do we take care of this thing when you go for genetic evaluation?
So yes, and that's fair enough, because we allow for the evaluations evolve within countries as well, and that's why the test evaluations are for. So 3 times a year. It used to be 2, but from this year it's 3 times a year. We have test evaluations, and that's when the genetic parameters get re-estimated as well. So 3 times per year.
Because with my personal experience, when you have millions of data, estimating genetic parameters is not really easy. Yeah. That's
correct.
Yeah,
it's time consuming. So the test evaluations, they can take longer. there's not so much pressure on because there's no strict deadline. As I said, the 1st of April was decided many years ago in our schedule. That's the first Tuesday of the year we need to produce that. But we have a more relaxed schedule on the test evaluations. But it's time consuming. But we have an infrastructure that can deal with it as well. Yeah. That is, I have maybe it's only 3 IT people, but we're 12 of us in total. 3 of those are IT, and there's a pretty good IT infrastructure in place for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Daniel or Mr. Zohan, or if anyone would like to say something or conclude the session or add on to the presentations.
I'll just conclude the session by expressing thanks to Martin and to Tuan for giving a good overview of the services that are offered by both ICAR and Interbull. And those are to the benefits of the members of ICAR and around the world. And now I think the next step in the agenda is our colleagues from IDF that are going to be hosting a session. So Philippe, you're up.
Thank you, Daniel. Just a few words. Welcome to this IDF ISO plenary session. 2 speakers for a combined presentation concerning IDF and ISO. Aurélie Dubois, IDF Program Manager, and Marcel de Vries, Secretary TC 34 SC5 on milk and milk products. So please, Aurélie and Marcel. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'll try to not spend too much time between you and lunch. What we want to do today is just to say a few words about IDF and ISO and how we work together to produce standards for methods of analysis and sampling for milk and milk products. So I will start with IDF, we'll move to ISO, and we'll go back and forth to let you more. And there will be time at the end for questions, maybe. So IDF is a non-governmental organization founded in 1903. We currently have 40 member countries representing about 1,200 experts, and that's 2/3 of the world milk production. What do? We provide science-based evidence and advice for standards and regulation setting. We serve as the voice of the global dairy sector to intergovernmental organization, and we provide a forum for the global dairy sector to reach consensus on key dairy issues. This is just an example of what we have done in the past year. We provide publications, what we call bulletins and reports on technical issues, world dairy situation reports, animal health topics. We organize a lot of events and technical webinars. We provide a lot of input to international organizations, in particular Codex. I will come back to that later. We produce fact sheets that are available for free on our website on key technical issues. And the topic of today, we produce joint IDF ISO standards. IDF covers the full dairy chain, from the farm to the fork, in 9 working areas. I won't read them all, but we have animal health and welfare management, farm management, nutrition and health, dairy policy and economics, food standards, hygiene and safety, methods of analysis and sampling. And they're all around 4 pillars that are sustainability, dairy safety and quality, and nutrition and health. Everything is underpinned by standards, which is really a foundation of the work in IDF. This is just to present you a few people. Most of them are here in the room. This is what we call the Method Standard Steering Group. You've seen Philippe earlier, is the chair, and together with Marcel and I, we are helped with colleagues representing 4 areas of work in IDF. We call them standing committee. We have some colleagues from New Zealand, so Richard Johnson and Kevin Van Cleef for analytical method for composition, Hans Kruschen that you saw earlier, and Jonathan Dreyer for analytical method and additive and contaminants. We have methods for dairy and microbiology, thanks to Barbara Gerten, Grit Fischer, and the chair Yao Su, and the Standing Committee on Laboratory Statistics and Quality Assurance, led by Rob Crawford and Daniel Schwartz, who are also in the room. Another view to see it is this way. We are organized on levels. The Standing Committee have subgroups. They're a bit not very friendly, but you will see the group C50 and so on. Each project has an action team that works on a specific topic. And for instance, for the first one, analytical method for additive and contaminant will work on chlorates or aflatoxins. The second one, analytical method for composition, would work on fat determination, protein, lactose, work on pH just started. The Committee on Laboratory Statistics and Quality Assurance would look at statistics, but also all methodology that are provided by the manufacturer present here. And methods for dairy microbiology will look at pathogens, but also starter cultures.
It's my moment to take over. We publish joint standards and we also do joint presentations, as you can see. This is my moment to say something about ISO. My name is Marcel de Vreese. I work at NEN, the Dutch Standardization Institute, and I'm the committee manager of ISO TC34 SE5. That's the ISO group on milk and milk products. First of all, perhaps some information about ISO. It has been mentioned before today several times. It's a very big organization, and their primary aim is to produce international standards. And to give you an indication, at this moment there are over 24,000 of these international standards. That sounds like a lot, and indeed it is. The reason is that standards are produced in every area, in every field that you can imagine, so that leads to a huge amount of these standards. It's also a very big global network that produces these standards. At this moment there are over 165 member countries in ISO active in the work, producing these standards, working on the content. That's done in different groups. These groups work on specific topics. Usually these groups are called technical committees, and we now have more than 300 of these technical committees, which is quite a considerable number, I think. And they are, as I'm told, developing over 100 standards every month, so that's quite big numbers. Just to clarify, there are a limited people actually paid by ISO. They are working for the ISO organization. They are based in Geneva. There's the central secretariat. People there are working on common things that need to be done in ISO, but the majority of the work is done in these technical committees, and they are hosted by different countries all over the world. Well, that was the general picture. I'd like to zoom in a bit now more on ISO work that's relevant for the food sector. There are 2 committees that I would like to mention today. The first one is ISO TC. TC stands for Technical Committee 34. Because that technical committee works on all kinds of standards for food products. There are a couple of others as well, for example ISO TC55 that works on standards for essential oils. But TC34 is much bigger and has much more different topics. Most of the work done in ISO TC34 is done in subcommittees that are working under the umbrella of TC34, so to speak. And I've listed a couple of them here on my sheet. Subcommittee 5, SE5, that one is known because that's the one on milk and milk products. That's the that closely cooperates with IDF in the production of standards for milk analysis and sampling mainly. Each of these subcommittees is hosted by a country, and SE5 is hosted by the Netherlands. Hans Kruijs is the chair, and then is the secretariat of that group. But there's also another subcommittee, Subcommittee 9. That's a different type of subcommittee. SC5 is vertical, as we call it, so that means they are aiming at one specific product group. But SC9, that's the group on microbiology, has a much broader horizontal application. They work on microbiology standards for all different kinds of food and also for water, for example. Another subcommittee that's interesting to mention perhaps is Subcommittee 17. That's the group that works on food safety management. They that's the group that has produced ISO 22000. Maybe that's a standard that you've heard of. It's the international standard for food safety management systems used all over the world. And of course, a different kind of standard than a standard on analysis of milk and milk products. A more recent one is mentioned is SC20. That's on food loss and waste management. That's becoming a more important topic. How can we prevent food waste by means of a management system? That's the aim of this new group. That one is run by Denmark. And one that I want to mention in particular is SC7. And that one has the title Spices, Culinary Herbs and Condiments, because that's a subcommittee that's hosted by India. BIS, the Indian Bureau of Standards, provides a secretariat, and the chair is also from India. Well, that's a bit more information on the structure at ISO level. It's very important to mention that the majority of work is done by national bodies. So there are national standardization bodies in many countries. For example, in Japan it's called JISC. In the Netherlands it's called NEN. Now in India it's BIS. In France it's AFNOR. And Kenya has one that's called CAPS. The US is NC, such as China, and I can go on for a while, but I won't do that. But it's important to be aware that all these countries have their national standardization bodies. They usually have mirror groups that meet on work that's done in ISO. The national groups supply the experts that participate in the ISO work. So that's a very important element in the structure of ISO. So much of the input is coming from the national organizations. As you perhaps know, these national standardization bodies are the gateway to work in ISO, but they also very often produce national standards that are of particular relevance for their own country. If possible, then it's better to work on an international standard, like an ISO standard, but sometimes it's necessary to do something nationally as well, and then you can do that too. Well, I've included the symbol of the Bureau of Indian Standards, but you probably already have seen that one. Yeah, just to give you an indication on Subcommittee 5, the Milk and Milk Products Committee. Everybody in his presentation so far has had nice pictures of countries, so I've done that as well. This one looks a bit different. The gray countries are countries that are not participating in SC5. The blue countries are countries that are actively participating in SC5, and we call them P members. And the yellow-brown countries are also involved in SC5, but in a less active way, you can say, and they're called observing members. And this picture gives you an indication of the changes in between 2019 and 2022. You can see that there are several changes. For example, the US joined as an active member. The US turned blue, and that also applies to China and Russia, for example. You can see that there are several yellow countries that also have become involved. So overall, you can see that the involvement is increasing, but it's also, I think, important to note that, for example, in countries in Africa, the involvement can be improved and increased. What's very nice to see is that India is blue in the first one and also in the second one. So that's a good sign, I think. And if you have very good eyes, then you can see in the middle of the picture a very small dark blue dot. That's the Netherlands. We are very small, but as you can see, we are in the center of the world, so that compensates it a bit. Yes, maybe something on why standardization. What is it, and what do these standards? Well, the main standards are produced to facilitate production, services, and processes. On the status of a standard, that's also sometimes not clear. Is it mandatory? Is it legislation or not? Well, it's not. It's a voluntary agreement between interested parties in respect of a product or a service or a process. A standard can be seen as something as documenting consensus about, for example, in milk and milk products and adequate methodology. Advantages of standards and standardization is that the outcome, the standard, is usually broadly supported, and one of the reasons for that is that all the stakeholders are allowed to become involved, so they can have their say, they can model and give input to these standards, and that takes a bit of time. Standards usually takes 2 or 3 years to finalize, but the big advantage of it is that the end result is broadly accepted, and it also means that it's used and implemented. There's also a reason, that's the bottom line of the sheet, that these standards, ISO and IDF standards also, of course, are very often used as reference documents. Well, this sheet gives a summary of 4 fields where you can see that that there's a benefit of using standards. Many of the standards are used to improve safety, food safety, safety of the environment, safety for health. They are also very often used to create a level playing field, for example, in trade, and I think that's the picture that applies mostly to the standards that we produce in ISO IDF. They also have a role in increasing sustainable economic growth, and last but not least, they are also very often used to increase innovation. If you have a new method, then you can put it in a standard, and that means that it's disseminated all over the world, and in that way increases innovation. Okay, so I think it's now your time again.
Thank you. Joe, what's the added value for the dairy sector for this work on standardization? So production, processing, and trade of milk and milk product is of course a global activity, and there's really a need and a demand for reliable standards for methods of analysis and sampling to provide equivalent results, comparable results, to ensure this level playing field that Marcel was talking about. And for who is this? It's for really everybody in the dairy chain, dairy farmers, processors, of course the dairy laboratories, but also the national authorities, government-controlled authorities, international authorities like Codex Alimentarius. It's very relevant for equipment and test manufacturers and providers that rely on these standards and provide the equipment to verify those. And a researcher also used those standards and comparable methods. And how do we do this? We collaborate. I will go in more detail on how we collaborate with ISO, but not only, with plenty of organizations, ICAR of course, but also AOAC, SEN, FAO, WHO, and others. To go more in detail on IDF and ISO standards, so they've been developed jointly by IDF and ISO in a single document since 2001. The collaboration actually is back to 1963 on the request of the Codex Alimentarius, so it's quite long. To date, we have nearly 200 standards published, of which about 50 are listed in Codex Standard 234. I will go in more detail on this. And we follow a harmonized procedure between IDF and ISO to ensure the double consensus at the expert level, but also at the country level to ensure the proper impact. So a few words about Codex Alimentarius. It's one of the use of our IDF ISO standard. So Codex Alimentarius, it's a joint FAO-WHO food code. So it's a sister organization from FAO and WHO. 2 objectives: to protect consumer health and ensure fair trade practices. The members are the government. I think most of the countries in the world, nearly 200, are members of FAO and WHO in the Codex Alimentarius context, and also observers that represent various trade association or expert bodies such as IDF and ISO. And then they use the source for information from expert bodies for the risk assessment in various areas, the scientific community, and the work of standard development organization like WOHA, ISO, IDF, and many more. I just want to take an example to illustrate how our IDF ISO standards are used in codex. So this is just a simple picture of what a dairy standard looks like. For example, it could be butter. There's always the same header, same content. What's the scope? The description of the term. What's the essential of a composition we're looking at? And sorry, it's maybe a little small, but here, for instance, for composition, I'll take the first line. We want a minimum milk fat content of 80% in order to be called butter. And then you have various sections on food additives, contaminant, hygiene, labeling, and methods of analysis. This is the basic content for all the dairy standards that you can find freely online on the Codex website. So if you remember that criteria for butter, we need to have minimum 80%. And how do we verify that? Then there's another standard called 234 that lists all the recommended methods of analysis to verify the provisions in the Codex standard. So in the case of butter, then we look at the right section. It will list the parameters that are included in the commodity standard. And here you will see the methods listed. So for milk fat, it's the second line. So it refers to the ISO 17189 IDF 194, which is a gravimetry method, and there's a typing on the right. I won't go too much detail here, but the typing is an indication of the type of method. Type 1 is a defining method. You really cannot compare to another one. It's the one that will provide the result. Type 2 is the other type of method, and that would be the dispute resolution method, which is chosen among other methods. That would be type 3 method. And then we have the type 4. I don't have an example here, but it's when the method is not fully validated on the matrix and we have nothing else better. And just as a note, in Codex, the relevant committees that takes all these decisions is a Codex Committee on Methods of Analysis and Sampling. It's hosted by the government of Hungary. It will meet virtually this year at the end of April, early May. Current topic on discussion on the determination of moisture in whey powders. So there's some discussion here about the possible other method that is proposed by some countries, but not standardized. So it's a bit of a discussion for us. There's also discussion on allergen determination, and also some discussion on nitrates and nitrates. And it's another action from this group is really as soon as we update a method here, we remove one, we add one, we make some changes, we inform this committee because then they can approve the changes in that list of 234, which is really a global list for methods around the world for reference, for dispute resolution, but also is used for routine purposes.
Yes. Yeah, maybe some more information on the output of the standardization work. We're producing standards. We've said that a couple of times already today. And that's true, of course. The international standard, the ISO IDF standard, is mostly produced. That's the type of standard that's mostly produced. There are, however, some other types of publications that you sometimes can choose. For example, there's an ISO technical specification. In IDF, it's called the recommended method. It's comparable to a standard, but usually this option is chosen if, for example, we already have an analytical protocol that we can standardize, but it hasn't been interlaboratory validated yet. So in that case, the method is first published as a technical specification or recommended method. And when afterwards, when the MLT, the interlaboratory study has been done and it had a successful ending with nice precision data, that can be added to the protocol, and the combination of the two is then produced as an international standard. So that's one of the reasons to select for the technical specification. There's also another type of publication which is more meant to provide information to the users. Standards normally have they contain a lot of requirements, so to speak. So they say, well, you shall do this and you shall not do that. So that's very clear and by means of instructions, but guidance documents can sometimes be more useful if you just want to provide some information without any requirements attached to it at all. If you look at the dispute resolution methods that are used for codex that orally just described, in that case you see that mostly the standards are used for that because they have a somewhat higher status. They contain validation data, so they are the most suitable option to be used for referencing in Codex Alimentarius. Yes, then a very short go through the procedure of your standard. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. But it all starts with somebody who comes up with a proposal to make a new standard. That goes to ISO, and all the other ISO countries are also asked, do you think it's a good idea to produce a standard on this topic? And when the majority simply says yes, then we have a new item in our work program. You always need a leader of the project. That's somebody who's responsible for the progress of the method. It's not somebody who is responsible for writing the whole content, him or herself, but indeed responsible for the process. It's important to note that if you start a new project in ISO, that you have to have at least, it has to be approved. There's a majority of approval votes, but you also need to have at least 5 nominated experts by the countries. And that rule has been set because of to assure that the project, if approved, can continue, and with at least 5 experts, but hopefully and usually much more, it certainly will. Then there's a stage which is called the CD, or the committee draft. It's in italics here because it's an optional stage. You can choose it or not. If you already have a very good working document, you could skip it, but in our work we usually use it because it's a very nice stage to gather information on the method, improve it perhaps, or make it more suitable and more robust. And that's very important because, as I said earlier, these protocols are very often used for interlaboratory studies to validate them. And it's better to start a validation when you're sure that your method is robust and everybody agrees with the content. But if that's the case, then you can do a validation study, collaborative trial, interlaboratory study. You can name it in different ways. And if that has been done and it led to successful results, then these results can be added to the protocol, as I said earlier. And the combination of the two can be published as a DIS, a draft international standard, also for comments, but also for voting. So member bodies can say approval or disapproval and give comments. Usually, if you look at the standard itself, there's a brief summary of the precision data that you can find in the standard itself. But if you want to know more about the validation study, more detailed information, then there's always a reference in the standard to, for example, an IDF bulletin or another publicly available publication where you can read that additional information. Then the FDIS, that's also in italics, so that means that it's optional. Sometimes you can immediately go to publication. If you don't get a lot of comments during the DIS ballot and everybody agrees with it, well, then it's no need to delay and you can immediately go to international standard. We very often use the FDIS ballot because we want to make sure that before the standard is published, that everybody can have a final look at the text, see if there are any small things that need to be changed, because only small things can be changed in that stage. Big things should have been changed in an earlier stage. So we very often use the FDIS as a final check before the standard is published. And when it's approved, then you have a new standard. And as I said, that can sometimes be very quickly, 2 or 3 years. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 years. But that usually, if it takes longer, then it's usually the reason for that is that there are some different opinions on the content by different experts, and sometimes it takes a while to reach consensus and publish the standard. Yeah, then something about when the standard has been published. There are organizations that publish standards and then do nothing at all. In ISO IDF we have a very nice system, if I say so myself, that the standards when they are published are frequently reviewed. Not revised, but reviewed. And that means that experts can have a look at the method for a standard that's, for example, after 5 years, to see if it's either still valid and can be confirmed for the next 5 years without any modification at all. The other extreme is that it's completely obsolete and replaced by much better and other standards, so then it's withdrawn. But there's also something in between, and that means that it's still good, but needs some modifications or improvements. and then it can be revised. There are also procedures for that. I won't go into much detail at this moment. But indeed, as it says here, it's a very good thing that obsolete standards that are not used anymore or are replaced with better techniques, for example, also can and should, in my view, be withdrawn, because that keeps the portfolio of standards nice and up to date. Well, here is some information on how to engage in our work. We've told you about what we're doing. I think you've got a pretty good idea by now what it is, and this sheet shows you some information on the added value that it can have to be involved. For example, for your organization, it, for example, generates international exposure and recognition for your organization. Another important thing is that you have early access to all kinds of information. If you are connected to this work, you get recent information from IDF and ISO, but you're also in contact with other experts that you can talk with, so that's a very important thing. And the main thing, I think, is that you're able to influence the standard in a way that for you is optimal. There's also some information here, I won't read it all, but that's more aimed at you as an individual expert participating. I already said that it's very nice to work in these groups because you meet a lot of other experts that some of them are known to you, and some of them you've talked before, but there usually are several that you haven't met before, so it's very interesting to talk to them, to meet them, and to exchange information. So if you're home and you read it later back, then it's probably very useful, and I think there are a lot of benefits to be involved in this work. I think that this is the last sheet. We've said a lot. Aurelius told you a lot, and I've told you a lot. Maybe some of you have remembered it all and know completely how it works, but I can imagine that for many of you there are several questions on procedures or otherwise. If that's the case, then you can ask them, of course, directly after we've finished, but it's also possible to ask them to us the rest of the week. I've said us, but that's the two of us, but you can see there are 4 pictures on this screen, apart from Aurélie and myself. There's also Katja Cizé from IDF. That's here. You've probably seen her because she's walking around in front of the podium a lot. And there's also my colleague from NEN, Laura Mout, who also knows a lot about the standards. Her field of application is mainly focused on microbiology, but she also knows a lot about the standardization procedure. So if there, once again, are questions, you can ask them either now or after the meeting and during the whole week to the 4 of us. And with that, I think we have concluded our presentation, so thank you for your attention. Okay, well, maybe later.
If there are still any questions, you can just raise your hands. Our volunteers would reach you. All right. So before we break for lunch and conclude this session, I would like to invite Mr. Philippe Trossard for concluding remarks of the session.
Thank you. Very quick conclusion because we are a little bit late. For the lunch, thank you, Aurélie and Marcel, for the presentation at first. This presentation gave a clear description and key points to have a better knowledge of IDF and ISO at first. And then they present the process and the joint IDF-ISO process to standardize analytical method. Maybe the most important thing is why to standardize and added value for dairy sector. Aurélie and Marcel propose a lot of advantages for standardization. I can maybe take 2 of them. The first is harmonization. Harmonization of the method is equivalent to harmonization of results, finally. And then the trade. We discussed about trade even this morning, and the trade is based on method. And ISO IDF method are well represented in codex for trade concerning, in some cases, as Marcel said, dispute resolution. So
great added value of standardization and ISO IDF standardization and analytical method for dairy sector. Thank you.
Thank you to all for attending this session, and thank you for such detailed presentations. Before we break for lunch, I would just like to inform you that in the evening at 7 p.m. we have a cultural event that is being organized here in the same auditorium. So we hope to see you in the evening too. And you may also like to visit the exhibitions and poster sessions which are available and open for the entire day. So we shall now break for lunch and we'll resume the technical sessions in this same hall at about 2:30 p.m. Thank you. Enjoy the lunch.